So welcome to an indoor video this time. The weather has been really quite atrocious recently and it just has not inspired me to go out at all and do any recording and show you some new gear that I've got to share with you. So I thought instead what I would do is I would have a look at the field recording sub on Reddit and pick 5 questions and try and answer them the best I can, because someone may be wondering the same thing and would appreciate the answer. So I'll get cracking. Question number 1. Single mic Omni or Cardioid? That's what someone on Reddit asks. Now what they're doing is they are doing video walks and they would like a microphone on top of their camera to try and capture a bit of the surrounding ambience. Now there is a preferred way to do this, and a way, I suppose you could say. I suppose a way would be just grab one Omni mic and pop it on top of your camera and away you go. That's going to give you a better quality of sound in terms of capturing more of the surrounding ambience, because it's a 360 degree microphone. It's going to capture everything around you, whereas with a Cardioid it's just really going to be pointing in one direction and you're just going to get what's in front of you. So I think in terms of having something that's slightly more immersive, then I would definitely go for the single Omni mic. However, there wouldn't be any reason not to go for 2 Omni mics, because those Omnis are generally pretty small. They're usually about that big, I suppose. There wouldn't be any reason why you couldn't attach both of those to your camera. Now if you was going to go down that route, which I would recommend you do, I would go onto Mic Booster. I would go and grab a couple of clippy EM272 lav mics. I would grab a couple of shock mounts, a couple of wind jammers, and then just go and buy a cheapy stereo bar from somewhere, and I would just attach it all to the camera hot shoe, and I would have a very portable, minimalist field recording rig on top of my camera. And not only that, if you're listening to it in stereo, it's just going to sound so much more immersive and so much nicer when you're watching that footage back as well. So that's how I would do it. Now if you wasn't particularly keen on using like a stereo bar and that type of thing, what you could actually do is just grab a bit of electrical tape and tape it around the side of the camera, so you've got one mic here, one mic here, and they're kind of got a bit of separation between each other with that camera body, which will also help with stereo separation as well. So maybe give that a try. On to question number 2. Can I just use some headphones? So this person is new to field recording and they're using a Zoom H2 with an existing pair of earbud type earphones, and they just want to know what sort of things should they look for, what are other people using, and why are they using them. So you can go quite in depth with headphones, but to save you the pain, I will say for anyone that is just starting out with field recording, don't go and spend loads of money on earphones or headphones. Just literally use what you've got, because at the end of the day the most important thing is to be able to monitor the audio. And if you have even a crappy pair of headphones, at least you can hear what it's like when you're listening back to it or you're recording live. However, if you would like to kind of explore things a little bit more, there are a few things that you can look for. So one, well, this is for me at least what I look for. So one is whether or not they are closed back or open back headphones. So these headphones here, these AKG K52s, very cheap and expensive, but actually quite good. These are closed back headphones, and the reason why I choose closed back headphones is because it isolates the sound a lot more. So rather than getting kind of bleed over from the environment, you're just listening to what you're recording, and that's that. It kind of closes out the rest of the world. So closed back headphones are definitely beneficial when you're field recording. Now with open back headphones, they work and they're fine for the most part, but the biggest issue is that you do get kind of bleed over. So when you're monitoring your audio, you're also listening to what's going on out in the environment. And personally for me, I find that it can be a little bit more difficult to monitor the audio with open back headphones and listening to kind of what else is going on behind me. So that's why I generally choose closed back headphones. Now you can also use in-ear ones as well, like the little earbud ones. I use a pair of in-ear monitors, and they work pretty much the same as these. They isolate everything, they keep the sound out and keep what you're listening to in. And I suppose the biggest benefit of them is that you can literally just fold them up, stick them in your pocket. They don't take up any room. These take up a bit more room, but of course I would recommend you look for a folding pair, because there's nothing worse than trying to pack these in your bag if it's already at maximum. It's just a bit of a pain to try and fit these in if you've got a lot in your bag. So foldable ones would definitely be more beneficial. Now, if you did want to possibly spend a little bit more, maybe get something a bit nicer, and perhaps you spending a bit more time listening to your field recordings rather than just setting up your levels and walking off, what you could do is have a look for a pair of headphones like these. Now, these are my all-time favourite headphones. I find these are absolutely just brilliant. These are the Beyerdynamic DT770 250 ohm ones. Now, there are several different variety of these headphones. The 250s are going to be more sort of suited for studio use, because they do require a fair bit of power to drive these, and field recorders don't have that type of power to be able to give you sufficient amounts of gain with these headphones. So you can look at the ones down from these. I actually forget how many ohms they are, or you can look at the lower ohmed ones, which are 80 ohm, I think, and either those ones or the next step up are absolutely perfect for field recording. Now, the reason why I use these ones is not only are they really, really comfortable, they also have a very flat frequency response. So by that, I mean, if you can think of a graph and you kind of got these peaks and troughs on the frequencies, maybe the bass is boosted a bit more, the trebles cut a little bit, the mid-range is kind of, wherever. Sometimes listening back to music or, environmental recordings and things, it can just make things sound a bit more unrealistic than what you would want. So by having something that has a flat frequency response, what you're listening to in your headphones is exactly what the microphones are capturing. So they're very accurate and very detailed. So next time you're checking out your headphones, just maybe see if you can find out what the frequency response is as well. It doesn't have to be dead flat all the way along. They can have little tweaks here and there, but just as long as there's not anything that's really over exaggerated. So that's really all I've got to say on headphones. Maybe someone else can chip in the comments and give maybe a better, more detailed response. So on to question number 3. How do you protect your ears when using headphones with high input levels and sudden loud sounds? So this is actually a very good question, and hearing is obviously very important, because if we don't have hearing, we can't do field recording. So we need to protect our hearing when we're listening through headphones, because I think we've all experienced it at some point. A loud sound has happened right close to the mics, and all of a sudden you've thrown the headphones off and been like, oh. So really, I guess the only way to really stop that from happening is by not listening at too louder levels. That's really the only way I can think of to stop that happening. Someone did mention in the thread about using compression. Basically, he was saying that, well, if you use a compressor, it's going to compress the peaks, therefore it won't be as loud if a loud noise occurs. And although that is correct, it's probably not the best thing to use for a field recording. And this is because with compression, yes, you are compressing those peaks down, but what you're also doing is raising up the lower parts of the sound as well. So if you're recording something quite quiet and there's some nice subtle background sounds, all of a sudden with compression, you're not only compressing those louder bits, you're also pushing up the quieter bits. And one real pain with that is if you have distant traffic in the background, that's going to become more central in the mix. You're going to hear it a lot more. So I wouldn't use compression. I would actually use limiting. So with a limiter, it's going to act in a similar sort of way. It's going to compress the peaks down, and then it keeps everything else as it is. So the quieter stuff will stay quiet, the louder stuff will get compressed down past a certain limit. So that's probably what I would do, worst case scenario. If you know you're going to be recording in an environment that has a lot of unpredictable loud sounds, then definitely have a look at the limiter on your field recording, because that can help quite a bit. So on to the next question. Need a good field recorder for Christmas? So this person is saying that they love recording sound effects and things like that, and whenever they go out and they've heard a sound, they've never had a field recorder on them, and they would really like to get one for Christmas so they can start the hobby of field recording. The person doesn't want something that's too expensive, and they also want something that's fairly quick and easy to set up. They have mentioned Zoom H4, but they're not really wanting to go for that. I think they probably want something with slightly lower noise preamps, from what I can gather. So I can't really speak of any of the newer generation of Zoom field recorders, the Essential range. I do have the Zoom H1N. That's the first field recorder that I ever had, and that's what got me into field recording. So I can say that that's a really great little field recorder to start with. It's very inexpensive now. You can even pick it up used. I think I've seen it for about £40 or so. So if you're just getting started, something like that might actually be a really good starting point. But if you do just want to go and buy something that's decent quality and it's going to just give you good results from the off, I would definitely recommend the Tascam X6. I've used both the Tascam X6, the X8 and the DR100 Mark III, which is this one here. This used to be Tascam's old flagship device, and it is, in my opinion, one of the best Tascam devices that they ever made. But yeah, I think the X6 is probably the best option because it's a bit smaller than the X8, might not have as many XLR ports, but you know, from what this person is saying, they just kind of want to be able to record when the mood takes them. So having something like this with the little inbuilt mics would be a really good option. You can not only have them in the XY configuration, you can also turn them around, and you can have them in the AB pattern as well. You've also got a nice little touchscreen on there that's pretty responsive. You've got built-in apps if that's your sort of thing. So for example, if you wanted to quickly set up a field recording session, you can just tap the field recording app and away you go. You can also use 3.5mm plug-in powered mics on this as well. The X8 you can't. Well, you can, but there's a workaround. But this just works from the off if you have 3.5mm mics. Everything else with this is, yeah, it's really decent quality. The batteries last a fairly decent amount of time. I use lithium ion ones. I think they're at 2800 milliamp. So when I'm using them with the built-in mics, I think I probably get between about 6 and 8 hours. I think if I'm using them with XLR mics, maybe a few hours there or thereabouts. So I think for ease of use, portability, the X6 definitely for me is a winner all day long. But if you do want to look at that used market, and you can find something like the Tascam DR100 Mark III for maybe a couple of hundred or less than a couple of hundred, I would definitely snap it up, because this is an absolutely brilliant field recorder. You've got a couple of built-in mics. They are unidirectional and omnidirectional, so cardioid and omnidirectional. You've got an aluminium chassis. You have a built-in battery, which is rechargeable, and you've also got a slot there for a couple of AAs, a bit of power redundancy. You can use your 3.5mm jack mics on there as well, and yeah, it's just a really well thought out, robust little device. And it's a real shame that Tascam discontinued that and they didn't make something similar but with 32-bit, but hey ho, that's the way it goes, I suppose. The other one to look at as well, actually, which I had used but only briefly, was the Roland one. I can't remember the model name. I'll stick it on the screen, but it looks quite similar to that, and it sounds just as good as well. This also has fairly low noise preamps, not quite as good as the X6, but still, if you can get this for under a couple of £100, I would definitely snap it up. If not, have a look at the Tascam X6. Why do you do field recording? So an interesting question, and one I'll ask you as well. Why do you do field recording? Let us know in the comments. I'll be intrigued to know why you do field recording as well. So I do field recording because a side effect of field recording, which I just randomly found out or thought of one day, is mindfulness. And I was finding that when I went out and I was going through the motions of setting up all my gear and checking everything was working, then finally sitting down and listening, that I was actually just forgetting the stresses and anxieties of general life and kind of came back a little bit more clear-headed. So that's probably the main reason why I do field recording now. Not only that, but I think you also get to appreciate the small things in nature, just very kind of subtle little details that bring everything together and make the environment what it is. A lot of times I think people overlook the amazingness of nature, and they kind of just maybe walk through a footpath or through a field and there's birds and animal sounds, and people just like, you know what, yeah, that's just part and parcel. But until you kind of sit down and you listen, I don't think you really realise what nature can do for the mind and the body, I suppose, by getting you out and going to these places and then kind of sitting down and relaxing and forgetting your stresses. So I think if more people took up field recording, we might have a slightly more relaxed world and nation. So over to you. Why do you do field recording?